welcome to another video on the channel. So I thought I'd give you some of my initial thoughts on the Carrera T. I've had the car for 24 hours now and I've driven it about 180 miles. I've really settled into it. I think straight away I can feel like it's more driver focused. You do feel more hunkered down. Obviously the suspension is dropped slightly, but also the seats feel quite low and really kind of grippy. I'm not sure whether they're that much different to the 992, but you know, I'm starting to feel this kind of driver focused element of the car. A couple of things I've noticed as well is when you're driving it, you tend to hear a lot of sort of gravel in the wheel arches. I'm not sure whether there is sort of less sound deadening, but compared with the 992 that I drove, it certainly feels like that. You can hear a lot of what's going on in the wheel arches, which I don't particularly mind, although I am a little bit worried about the paintwork most of the time, because that's just how I am. I do use the word precise a lot when I drive Porsches, but talking about the gearbox does feel really precise. It's got a rifle bolt type action. It's really short throw because it's got the short gear shifter. I don't think the linkage is any shorter than the regular sort of 991.2 generation gearboxes, but the short shifter does make it feel that little bit quicker and a little bit more driver focused. I think some people have struggled with the gearbox, and I think when you first get into a car and things are new, there are certain things that you struggle with. I struggled with the gearbox a little bit with the kind of move from 6th to 7th. I found that quite awkward, but I think all the sort of the lower gears, the ones that you'll be using for kind of more focused driving. Obviously yesterday I drove it back on the motorway, so there was a lot of going between 5th, 6th and 7th. But when you're kind of driving a little bit more spirited on country roads, there's a lot more focus on sort of 3 to 4 and possibly up to 5, and I think that's where the gearbox really kind of comes into its own. And once you get used to the kind of slightly dog-legged element of 7th, you start to settle into it. I think I was overthinking it a bit to a certain extent, but the kind of move between sort of 3rd and 4th is really nice. I was talking to Rob at Porsche, and he said one of the things that he noticed with this gearbox was that where it settles naturally when it's into neutral, it goes back to the 3 to 4 position, which is most of the time where you want to be when you're driving it kind of more aggressively. So it's quite nice that it drops back into that position. So sort of working between 3 and 4 is quite fun. It always sort of nips back to it. So the Carrera T has the kind of magneto or the switch on the steering wheel for Sport and Sports Plus, and also an individual setting that you can set up yourself. That does really make a difference. As you switch between those modes, you can feel the suspension firm up. All of the lights for the suspension, the exhaust and the rear wing switch on once you go into Sports Plus mode, and you can feel it's firmer. The exhaust is a little bit more cautious as well. I think even in standard mode it does feel firmer or more firm than the 992 because of the sort of lowered sport suspension, but I found on the motorway, cruising, when I've just got it in normal mode, it was nice and it wasn't noisy, so it's very livable as a kind of a day-to-day car. The steering has a lovely progressive weight to it as well when you're turning into corners. Mainly I'm sort of comparing it with the Lotus. I mean, I drive an Audi on a day-to-day basis, a front-wheel drive Audi, and you know, that's about as non-steering as you can get. With the Lotus, obviously it's an older car, but it has a really nice weight to the steering, but obviously then you get sort of progressive understeer the quicker you go and the tighter the corners they are. But the first things that I've noticed about this is you've got the kind of weighted feel of the Lotus. It's lighter around town, it's really easy to steer in traffic, weights up nicely as you go faster, but then also the understeer is kind of negligible compared with the Lotus. You can sort of plough into a corner at speed you would in the Lotus, put some lock onto the steering, and then wait for the feel of the understeer, and it just doesn't really happen in this. It just still turns and tightens up into the corner, which is, you know, really rewarding, and it's really confidence building as well, just to know that it sticks to its line even at slightly higher speeds. And talking of speeds as well, I mean, obviously one of the things is you've got to drive these things sensibly on public roads. I think it would make a great track toy as well, even, well, because of those different modes that you can set it into. But I think one of the things that I'm noticing about this car is you can have fun at sensible speeds. I think because it has, I think the sort of narrowest tyres of any of the sort of 911, 991 generation, certainly on the front, the car moves around under you a little bit with the tyres, which is a similar sort of thing that I said to about the 992. I think even though as standard this car came with, you know, you could delete the Porsche navigation, radio and the PCM unit as standard, or opt it back in for free, and the air conditioning as well. This car's got the you know, the navigation and the radio and everything, and also air conditioning. And I think for me, I think there's only so far I would want to go for this sort of lightness thing. I think I'd have to have the air conditioning and the navigation and everything else. I think I'd rather just go to the gym and lose a few pounds that way and still have the sort of creature comforts. I think one of the things this car hasn't got that I'd opt back in, as I've got a family, is the rear seats. I'm not sure what the weight difference is by losing those, but I think the fact that I can't go out with the family in this is a little bit of a drawback for me. So I would probably opt the seats back in. It would be nice, I don't know whether they can do this, is whether you could kind of take the seats out and put them in as and when you felt like it. I think that would be quite nice, but I think I'd be prepared to make that concession to the weight of the rear seats and probably look to lose weight elsewhere. I think one of the things I am impressed with that I haven't really experienced before is the ceramic brakes. They do squeak a little bit, but apparently some cars do and some cars don't. But the stopping power is absolutely amazing. It's really confidence inspiring. You can sort of shave speed off at a sort of much sort of later into the braking zone than you probably would have done in anything else. So I'm really impressed with those. I think it's something that I would option. But £6,000 is quite a lot. But I think a lot of people would sort of look out for that on the used market and sort of go for the ceramic brakes. I suppose the only thing to worry about is that once they need changing, you're probably going to be in for £6,000 again. But I think if you're prepared for it, I think it's certainly something that I'd recommend. I do love the colour of this car as well. I do love a yellow car. I've always sort of thought I should have brought a Norfolk mustard yellow Lotus Elan rather than the British Racing green one that I've got. But I think with this such a sort of a fun driver-focused car, I think it's really nice to have something that's a bit vibrant and a bit fun. Just like with an Elise or an Exige, I think these kind of colours suit this type of car really well. I also like the yellow detailing, the accents that follow over into the interior. This is the Carrera T optional interior that I mentioned in the first video. So it's got the yellow stitching. It's got the yellow stitching on the seats, on the doors, and on the dashboard. It's also got the yellow pull cords as well, and the yellow seat belts, as you can see. And again, they all add to the feel of the car a little bit as well. This 3-litre engine is really nice. I think it's a bit of a sort of spec up and down type approach. That it's got the final drive of a Carrera S. It's got a limited slip differential as well. But this sort of combination with the manual gearbox makes for a really sort of sweet combination. I know a lot of the time with engines it can be that you can have a bigger capacity, but it doesn't just quite fit with that particular engine. And I think with this engine, with the 3-litre with the manual box, it really does seem to be the sweet spot. I know that when they were developing this car, they were thinking, or they did trial the 6-speed gearbox from the GT3 in this car, and I think earlier on people thought that would have been the best option. But I think they did do some development on this gearbox. I haven't driven earlier 991 generation 911s, but talking to the guys at Porsche, I think a lot of development did go on with this gearbox, and I think it is better than it was found in earlier versions of the 991. Obviously this came out right at the end of the 991's life, so this was probably peak development for this 7-speed gearbox. But as I mentioned, the fact that it sort of goes back between sort of third and fourth as its kind of centraling position, as mentioned by Porsche to me, I think that is a big improvement. I think it just sticks that position right in the middle of what you're using when you're on a B road, which really works for the driving experience. Like with any Porsche, the build quality in here is absolutely terrific. Feels like, I think Harry from Harry's Garage said that they always feel like they're made from granite and will last 100 years. And you know, this car is coming up to 3 years old now, and it looks absolutely brand new in here. The quality of the materials, the mix of materials, the quality of the stitching is the best, you know, the best that you could expect really. So it's a hard wearing interior as well. It's not got any marks on it, so it really is a lovely place to be. I like the fact that you've got the navigation, you've got your kind of classic 5 dials in front of you, and they're still mechanical on this as well, which, you know, from a driver's point of view, that feels quite nice. It's that, you know, they're still mechanical dials if you're a bit of a phobic of all these screens that are going on in cars these days. But the second from right dial on the classic sort of 5 dials of the 911 is a TFT screen. It's really nice that the others are mechanical, not like in the 992 where they're all digital. But it depends on what you like. I quite like a bit of a mixture of mechanical dials and digital dials. Like I say, the second from right is a TFT screen, and you can have the sat-nav on there as well. And I found that really useful to have that right in my eye line and not having to glance to the sat-nav on the centre console. So that's about it for this sort of second video in my week with the 911 Carrera T. We'll be moving on to a road trip to the Peak District for the third video, and then hopefully we'll be able to get into a little bit more of the driving dynamics and a few of the details and specifications of this particular car. Hopefully the weather will be a bit better as well, because it's raining today. So I hope you enjoyed the video and you enjoyed the previous video in the series picking up the 911 Carrera T. There's a link here if you haven't seen that one yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when new videos are coming up on the channel. Anyway, as I said, thanks very much for watching, and see you soon.